Today has been a complete roller coaster of a day, and I'm in Williams, Arizona. This is a place that I know well, that I've been to I come and I stay for all of these trips, and I come to a lot of times when I'm not doing these treks because this is where, when you're coming across I-40, this is where you get off. It's a very touristy little town, and you turn and you go about 50 miles into the south rim of the Grand Canyon. So it's spectacularly beautiful landscape, and it's a one of a kind kind of a community. But I have an amazing memory from here. In 2008, it was the site of my one and only mechanical failure. And of course, because life is this way, I had a mechanical failure and a storm at the exact same moment. And turns probably somewhat related, but we won't go into that. Anyway, the bike was unrideable, and I did not know what to do because this town did not have gas stations with working garages in it. And I was able to, through the yellow pages, because they weren't on Google, find the Grand Motorsports, which is owned and operated by Shayne Newbold. And I made a phone call, and within 10 minutes, a gentleman showed up who looked like a complete ZZ Top doppelganger. Unbelievable. Anyway, he was able to get my bike, so that I could at least ride it temporarily. And so we got it back to his shop, where he and his two best friends set about actually end milling a replacement part for me. And it was remarkable to watch. Not only their resourcefulness, but just the ingenuity that went into the work that they were doing. And when I left, they refused to let me pay them. When I left, I walked out of there with the beginning of what would be a 12-year friendship, and 2 hours of my favorite tape of the entire trip. It was so interesting, of course, as all things are, because we were in completely different places. Shayne and his friends are survivalists. They live off the grid, and they are incredibly good engineers. They built their own solar power systems and the batteries, and just very honorable people. And so I never come to Williams without seeing them. And it turns out that I was so excited today that before I even went to the hotel, I turned down the street to go to Grand Motorsports to say hi. And Shayne had he had these big boulders on the corner he was at the end of the block, and he had tilted up on it a vintage motorcycle, almost like art. And my heart sank as I turned the corner, because I looked down the block, and there was no motorcycle. And as I got closer, I realized there was no sign. Every vestige of the Grand Motorsports were gone. I had been here as recently as 2018, and I just didn't see that coming. And I was crestfallen. I actually got out of the car, I walked around thinking maybe I could will it into being, and it was just not to be. So I went and checked in, and processed it a little bit, and then picked up my recorder and set off on foot into Williams, and decided that I was going to try and find as many locals as I could to see if anybody knew if there was a way to reach him. It turns out survivalists are not always. I never had a cell phone number for him before, and so but first came across Daniel, who you're going to see in a minute. And Daniel teaches guitar on this side of the main drag in Williams, and he is a very accomplished musician, and he and a colorful spirit, and he actually he thought that Shayne might have been in an accident, and so I was a little bit scared at that point. Luckily, I made my way up the road, and I met Pete of Pete's Gas, a vintage gas station, not operating, but a really kind of a Route 66 mini museum. And I'm also going to be introducing you to Pete in a second. And Pete directed me to some women who work at the visitor center. He thought maybe they might know. And because I had mentioned to him about Shayne's wife, Rose. And sure enough, I went to the visitor center, and Pimmy, who works there, was took a little digging, but she was able to find Rose's phone number, and she promptly called her on my behalf. And Rose, who's making her way back from California, gave me Shayne's phone number. So Shayne has retired, and he is living nearby in an undisclosed area. And I have about 45 to 50 minutes of audio tape that I was able to do over the phone, talking to him tonight. It's going to take, because it's Shayne, it's going to take a little editing. So I'm going to tackle that tomorrow night. But for now, I'd like to check out the comments, because I'm going to leave a link down there that if you want to see the interview from 2016, he was on the Trump train, and tune in tomorrow if you want to find out how that turned out. But it's a really interesting interview. I think you'll like it. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce you to Pete and to Daniel, both of whom went a long way to reminding me that the kind of individualistic ruggedness that kind of defined Shayne and his friends for me is not unique in this area. I think you'll see what I mean. If you could say in one word how you are feeling about this upcoming election, what would that word be?
Mixed.
Okay. Do you want to say any more, or is that does that kind of capture it for you?
Well, if I can say one more thing.
Yes, please.
I will not vote for government control over my life.
So.
And that's it. I won't go into detail.
That's
because somebody should be able to figure that part out.
Fair enough. Thank you for taking the time with me, and stay healthy and stay safe, okay?
I'm healthy and safe all the time. And I don't necessarily follow the rules.
That's fair. And I've come to understand that's not unusual here in Williams.
Hey, it's not unusual in the United States.
Thank you.
It's only unusual if you believe the news media.
Thank you.
All the people have missing parts in their personality, in their soul, and they live an out-of-life body trying to fit into the world. So go a little slow with all the people, whether it's the dog barking or the birds chirping. The foxes have holes and the birds have nests, but the Son of Man hath no place to rest. So try to make your neighbor and the Son of Man feel more welcome.
And in this election, how do you feel that we're going to bring the country together?
I put my faith in God, the living God, and you and all the other people, and Christ and my Savior is the living God, and He's indwelled in our spirits and our minds, and that is what will hold the fabric of the universe together. It isn't held together by me or the sun or anything. It's held together by the fabric of the living God.
And so, do you think you're hopeful for the next 4 years?
I think everything's going to be okay. I wouldn't worry about it. Go to sleep tonight. Say a prayer before you go to sleep. Be glad.